Good evening. Welcome to the Dominance Academy. I'm your host, Mr. Justin. And tonight we've got a little bit more informative show. We're just going to go through lists, right? We're going to go through a list. Keep it nice and simple, streamlined, and I'll do my best not to get too deep on you guys. I know things have been a little on the heavier side lately, and but that's just how it goes sometimes with me. You know, it's that whole gravity thing. But yeah, so yeah, we're gonna get into some lists about like the stuff that men and doms love, and things that women and submissives love. Because, you know, as much as, you know, guys would like to kind of keep things simple, and there's that trope that is running around for a long time that men are just so simple. Men are not simple. You just haven't really uncovered your desires and your needs. And most guys, they're like, yeah, if I just have, you know, a job, a car, a home, food, sex, I'm good. Like, I don't need anything else. And to that, I would say, yes, those are true, but that's just the basics. And the reason why most guys have just the basics is that they're not encouraged. They're not encouraged to seek out their desires. We're trained early on to that's a selfish thing to do, and selfish men are bad. And I say, nay, selfish men are great. Because how are you supposed to cultivate something without being selfish? Like gravity, right? I talk a lot about gravity. Gravity wants to draw in. That's sort of, you know, like a cosmic form of being selfish. And, you know, and that's what selfishness does. It draws in. It says, I want that. I want to experience that. I want to develop that. And it starts pulling in energy, time, resources, what have you. But it gets really kind of programmed into us that this is bad. That selfish men are bad. Selfish men are evil. And I think I've only had like one person in my life, a woman, only one woman in my life ever tell me that I'm too selfish. The rest have, I don't know, just accepted it or didn't notice, or they liked it. I don't know. But I've only heard it from one woman in all of my years. And the thing about women and subs, yes, we hear about the desires of women constantly. Let me just turn up my mic a little bit. Hey, there we go. So we hear about the desires of women constantly. And we sometimes hear about their needs, and their needs are really generic. I don't think they actually hit home much at all, or they're kept vague. And so that's what we're going to be getting into as well, because I think it's important for guys to understand what the true needs are for women. And, you know, what really resonates into their core, not just, you know, the basics of, you know, the stuff that you hear online or whatever. You know, because guys will hear that and sometimes they're contradicting. You know, they're like, I need him to be funny. I need a guy to be funny, but not a jokester. I need a guy to be strong, but not cold. Like, I need him to be tough, but not too tough. You know, just this like perfect middle ground of everything. And, you know, this can be kind of confusing to guys. And I would say to that, those are all surface level things. And I really don't spend too much time listening to or paying attention to desires on that level. Like, to me, it's What the hell is that? Like some big truck outside, like backing up or something like that at this hour. Anyway, so that's what we're going to be getting into. All right, sorry about that. Okay. So where were we? Let's get to that list. Nope, that's the wrong profile. Okay. So we're going to first go into the women. The 10 things that submissive women want. And really it's nothing tangible. It's nothing tangible. Because those tangible things are nice, of course. You know, everybody likes nice, tangible things. You know, we all like good clothes. We like good homes. We like good food. That's natural for pretty much everybody. You know, like who's going to say, I would like to live in a hovel, right? They don't do that. They're like, yeah, I want to live in a nice place. So for a woman to say, I'd like my man to have a nice home, like that's fine because that's like pretty much everybody too. Okay, but dudes will hear this and go, oh my God, she wants so much. All you got to do is just not listen or not pay attention, right? It's really not that hard. You know, kids will say they want everything under the sun. It doesn't mean that it's important, right? But the reason why it becomes important because guys will put importance on what women are saying, like with regard to like their desires, because they're looking for the in. And the reason why they're looking for the in is that they're looking for the validation. How can I show her that I'm enough? And then she holds up her list, and not even to him, but she's just holding up her list, and he kind of looks at it over her shoulder and goes, oh, geez, that thing's like got 100 items long, and I'm only got 5. Or I have none of them, or whatever, you know? I was like, well, why are you looking at this list? It's just thoughts, you know? It's just a series of thoughts. That's it. And thoughts, regardless of their content, they all weigh the same. There's no actual heavy thoughts or light thoughts, right? It has to do with your emotional attachments to the thoughts, which makes them be perceived as light or heavy. So just keep that in mind. Okay, so the first thing on here that submissive women want is they want sovereign stillness. And that means that she seeks a man who cannot be shaken. He's emotionally immovable. His calm is a gravitational force. In her chaos, he is the still point around which her world orbits. So he's like the sun, and she's the planetary bodies revolving around it. And I said bodies, plural, because, you know, women, they've got all kinds of different personalities and traits going on inside them. And they're sometimes different every day. You know, for some girls, it's different by the hour. So those planetary bodies, they'll have different personalities, each planet. But the sun is constant, right? And the thing is that it's not a wild, raging inferno. It's just this steady burn that goes on and on and on for millennia. Okay? Nothing that happens around the sun is actually going to disturb the sun. It stays centered. And then all the other things that move around them. So emotionally speaking, this is to say that if she brings something to you that either annoys you, or she's angry with you, or she's done something disrespectful, or she's having a bad day, someone at work or whatever, family, no matter what, whether it's something about her life or something about you or something she's bringing to you, it doesn't matter. You're emotionally stable. And the reason for this is it's comforting because you are the direct opposite of their internal state, which is always in flux. It's always shifting. There's always a certain amount of chaos going on. It's depending on what's going on. It's sometimes higher, sometimes lower, but there's always something going on there. And to be around someone who is unaffected, his mind is the direct opposite of this. It's calm, it's quiet, it's more dense. This is sort of a double-edged sword because on one hand, it's like, oh, he doesn't get moved by me. And that kind of puts a dent in the ego a little bit because it shows that she's not that influential over him. After being around, if it's a girl who's had experiences with a lot of guys, she learns that she can be influential over men. And then she comes across a guy who genuinely just isn't moved. So it kind of dings the ego, but at the same time, it's like, oh, okay, this is different. And she doesn't get the same, there's actually no feedback. I was going to say it's not the same feedback, but there's no feedback because he's not kind of reciprocating into that cycle of shared energy. He's just still. And so this is attractive, but also can shake her at first. In time, it actually becomes a point of comfort, which is why girls really like this. All right, the next one is ritualized intent. So granted, I did say men, but this is, some of it is geared towards doms and subs. But understand that at the root of dom, underneath dom, is the layer of man. A dom cannot exist without the foundation of manhood. And a sub cannot exist with a foundation of femalehood. So there's always the human level first. So don't think that this stuff, if it does sound a bit theatrical, and that only doms would do this in a dynamic, that's not true. All right, and I'll explain when we come across them. So next one is ritualized intent. So this is not random control, but deliberate authority. She wants his dominance to feel like a sacred practice, structured, purposeful, almost ceremonial in its consistency. And the difference between that and say a cold schedule is that it's something that's meaningful to you. Okay. And the idea around ritualized intent is that there's reason behind your control. That's why I said not random control. There's reason behind the control. And and the reason for it is development. Because you don't want a relationship that stagnates. You don't want it to just kind of get to a point and it just stays there. You want to constantly allow things to grow, nurture. Sometimes things need to be broken down and removed. Sometimes these things need to be encouraged and pushed to get to another level. And this can't be done randomly, right? It has to be done with deliberate authority. And so and because it has that deliberateness to it, and with the proper intent behind it, that's when then the dominance feels to her like it's something sacred to you. That your leadership, if you don't want to use dominance, you just say leadership, that your leadership is to feel like a sacred practice. And it's just like it almost is ceremonial in how it's exerted and in its consistency. Because you want to take your, like as a leader, you want to take your leadership that seriously. And you don't want to fall into the trap. Like if you come across someone who is, a girl who's very much willing to follow, don't get lazy. It's far too easy to get lazy. And this is destructive, right? This can be very detrimental, because you don't want to be the captain who puts his feet up. Okay. You want to constantly be at the helm, regardless of what's happening. So that sovereign stillness, that's also for the good stuff. Don't let yourself be swayed by joy, by sexuality, by eroticism, by her happiness, by bliss or whatever. Like, so good emotions, bad emotions, like nothing is going to deviate you off of your square. Okay. It doesn't mean that you're cold and unfeeling. That means that these things will not grab you and pull you off. And it's very, very important as a man. So you feel with all of your might if you want to, but nothing remains attached. All right, third one here that submissive women want is refined perception. Pardon the sirens. Is that she craves a man who sees more than her body or her obedience. A man who reads micro reactions, anticipates her internal shifts, and adapts his control with elegance. And so with the reading of micro reactions, this comes with paying attention, because you don't want to, again, like you don't want to be sleepy behind the wheel. Because when someone is under you, when a woman is under you and you are guiding them, you are influencing them, I promise that you will be paying attention to a lot of stuff, right? Because the reason why you even got there in the first place is because you got to a level of paying attention to yourself, okay? So the detail, like the mechanism for recognizing detail, has been kind of sparked in you. And now you can see within the behaviors of her. And so you're looking for reactions, micro reactions, small things. Like it all depends on like what is the goal of refinement. Okay. Because I do think that part of a man's job is to encourage his woman to be better, is to coach his submissive and train his submissive into being better, training his woman to be better. And, obviously all the while you're still doing the same thing for yourself. Okay. So you don't want to be a hypocrite, right? Don't be the man that's do as I say, not as I do, right? That's just an awful way to lead. So, so therein lies, like a pinprick that you should be mindful of what you are, what you're trying to teach or what you're trying to train. So like, for instance, if there's something going on with communication and you want her to communicate better, you can't be a poor communicator. It's not going to work. Okay. Don't be that guy. Make sure that you have good communication, that you're punctual, that you speak clearly and concisely, that you don't have like implied meanings, that you're not being passive aggressive, that you're being straightforward. You're mindful of your punctuation, you're mindful of your grammar, and because these are things that you'd like to see in your girl, right? You don't want her using, bad language. Like, let's just say that's what it is. You don't want her to be using bad language. You don't want her cussing. You don't want her, you want her grammar to be on point. You don't want her to be speaking in slang, all sorts of stuff, right? It's individual, but just make sure that you are doing those things first. That's very important. And so that's like the micro stuff, right? And the macro reactions. Okay. Pay attention, right? That's the refined perception part. Anticipating her internal shifts. So this is also paying attention, but on the more subtle, the subtle side of things, where you started to read patterns, how she emotionally responds. And when you get attuned to it, you can even guess correctly the emotional states like before they even hit. Okay. So you can start to anticipate them, and then from the anticipation, you can lead better. So it's almost like playing a game of chess against like a master chess player. And you do a couple of moves and they already know what you're going to do next because they know all the possibilities of what could happen. So they're like, oh, yeah, I know exactly what he's going to do. And you just wait patiently. And not even that, but at that point, the master chess player knows how to guide the game. Because if he knows he's going to move this piece there, then I know exactly what to do, and I can lead them to making specific choices to guide the behavior that I want to see, right? In this case, it's for the betterment of the woman, betterment of the submissive. And then the last part here, it says adapts his control with elegance. So you don't want to be heavy-handed with this. You don't want to have a hammer all the time. I mean, sometimes the hammer is necessary, okay? Or some people say like leading with an iron fist. Sometimes the iron fist is necessary. It should not be constant though. Like if it's coming out often, there's really something wrong with your leadership. There really is, because you're trying to lead with force, and this is no good. You should be leading with power, not force. And power is more adaptive. It can shift and change and take many shapes. Force is, pretty straightforward. It only has one shape. It only does one thing really well. And so sometimes, occasionally, force is necessary. An extra stern voice, a harsh punishment, a harsh spanking, or some other form of like harsh punishment. Okay. But if you're having to do this often, you really need to check your program. Check your state, see what's going on with you. Okay. It all starts with you. But corrections will happen, constantly. I mean, not like day after day, but there will be corrections that have to be done, right? Because we're humans. Okay. The submissive is not a robot. Okay. You can't just program her once and then she just runs that way indefinitely. That's just not how life works. We're organic beings. And things come up, right? Work, family, environment, all sorts of stuff. Illness, injuries, like they all play a role, okay? If you take this very far in terms of years, like, girls will go through menopause, and that takes a tremendous shift. So you need to learn how to control, adapt your control with elegance. You don't want to come in with the heavy hammer all the time. You want to be smooth, almost like, elegant with it. So, I guess it's like the difference between a barbarian and a swordsman with a rapier, right? Like those French swordsmen with the guard that covers the handle, and it's like long and pointy, and they're like en garde, like that's all about precision and grace and fluid movement, right? So you want to be able to have your control like that versus, a broad battle axe. You know what I mean? But like I said, sometimes the battle axe is necessary. Yep. Okay, number 4 here is, women subs, they're looking for erotic ownership of time. So a dominant who not only claims her body, but governs pacing, when she may rest, when she may feel, when pleasure is allowed. She yearns to be suspended in his rhythm. So this can be in the macro and the micro. So like we've talked about controlling pacing, timing, and tension and intensity, say in the bedroom. Okay. And so that's a way to own time. But this can extend outside of that, and how you lead with controlling time and influencing her time. And yes, it can get to a certain part where she's asking permission to go to sleep. She's asking to express herself. She's asking to have an orgasm. It depends on like how minute your influence and your control goes. And what I've noticed, like I don't get like super micromanagey in my dynamics, but I do know some doms that are. I just don't have the time or the patience for it, and that's just me. But I've not noticed any girls who were like put off by it. They weren't put off by the management of time and what they can do and when. And of course, there has to be, high level of attraction, trust, and respect. But, when that's there, that's when they welcome your control. Like they really like you and they really respect you. They welcome the control. They don't mind. Okay. Now, are they going to remember all the time and follow through all the time? No. Right. Because they're not robots. That's just the way it is sometimes. And that's okay, right? Because that's an opportunity for you to lead again, and practice correction, practice redirection, practice punishment, which can, depending on where you are in your state, challenge you, right? Because I know guys, they have problems thinking like, punish my girl? Like, and they have a hard time believing that they can, like that they have that authority. Okay. But you get them outside of that situation and they'll be all big chested and be like, yeah, man, like the relationship's mine. I'm the leader. She's following me. She's in my world. It's like, yeah, you've got all the correct lingo, but put your money where your mouth is. Okay. And that will really bring up those fears and insecurities, thinking, gosh, I can't treat her like this. Okay. Are you abusing her? No. Actually, it's quite the opposite. You are paying attention. You're caring for her in the sense that you're doing things to govern certain unwanted behaviors that, if corrected, would benefit everybody involved. It'll benefit her because like a bad habit is being expunged, and it will benefit you because then that thing you don't have to worry about anymore. And 3, that will just increase the density of the relationship. But again, you shouldn't have to explain this to the girl. Okay. She should just be able to feel it. My explanation is for like a naysayer who's like, are you crazy? Because I've had to explain this to some guys, sometimes on podcasts or whatever, Clubhouse, anywhere I'm like speaking, and they're like, what? Like, you punish your girl? Like, yeah. Yes, I do. It's not often, but I do. But it's not rare either, because I realize I accept the humanity of girls. And so moving on here, number 5, moral severity. So there's a difference between moral severity and being cruel. Okay, so this isn't cruelty. What it is to have incorruptible standards. And she wants to kneel before a man who does not waver in his values. He doesn't waver in his codes, his principles, and his rules, even when her tears or her charm might tempt compromise. Like I see this meme all the time. Like it'll say, well, first the one meme is like, girls like never apologize. Like it shows like one, you ever see that one where it shows like this little picture and it's like man apology. And then there's like a man, and then there's a box that says like, I'm sorry. And there's like straight line that goes right to it. And then on the other side, it says like woman. And then there's another box that says, I'm sorry. And the guy takes a marker and he goes, like scribbles all over the place, this crazy, wiggly, board, and then like ends at like a different spot, or like eventually lands on it, or like ends on a different spot. And then he draws like, blowjob or something like that. And then there's this other meme that I saw, it shows like a girl like bent over or something like that, where she's in bed on her side and she's like flipped the covers over, exposing her ass. And it says, how girls say they're sorry. And I don't accept any of that. And this is another benefit to controlling your lust, because so many guys will accept that. They'll get some sort of, an insult, some kind of shitty behavior, whatever. Okay. Just whatever it is within their relationship that would deem a punishment. Okay. Some sort of correction. And instead of like doing it, she knows she's in trouble. She knows she's pissed him off or hurt his feelings or whatever. And she just fixes it with her body. She flips her shirt up, jiggles her tits for him, goes down on him, goes onto the bed and bends over and spreads herself. And that's like her way of saying sorry. But it's like, that's not going to do. And when you have control of your lust, then that stuff doesn't work. And then after a while, she gets to understand that it won't work. So she stops trying. And that really puts a spotlight on accountability. And so if you're not wavering in anything, if you're not, your standards are incorruptible, your values aren't, your codes, your principles and rules, then you're immovable. And when there's like some sort of infraction, plus you being immovable, there's no wiggle room for her. But if you have that little doorway of lust that she can kind of crack open, then that allows for wiggle room for her to get out of trouble, right? So that stuff will not work, all right? And then on top of it, if you do that, what you're doing inadvertently is rewarding poor behavior. And I've heard so many guys saying if his girl pisses him off, he'll give her a good fucking, and talks about it like it's sort of like some kind of reset button. and I'm like, that just makes no sense, because if you're coming from the standpoint that dick is a gift, then why are you giving somebody a gift for misbehaving? It doesn't make any sense. What needs to happen is a punishment. There has to be understood consequences for behavior. And if you're in any position of scaring or scared to hurt her feelings, scared of her leaving, scared of her getting upset with you, then you're going to have a real difficult time managing your relationships, because she's not perfect. She's never going to be perfect. People make mistakes, and you need to show them that there's a structure in which they can create infractions against, so that there's a known system. Okay. So basically what I'm saying is, just hearing I'm sorry isn't enough for me. I need to see something that has to do with behavior. So that's why I'm big on having things be related and a 1-to-1 ratio. Okay. So what I mean by that is the punishment, if there happens to be a punishment, or the correction, needs to be something that is somewhat related to the infraction. And this is really important because it's in the same vein. Okay. And it kind of sinks it in because it's close. It's like a cousin to the behavior. That's kind of how you want to look at it. And then the severity needs to be on a 1-to-1 ratio. So, like if she forgets to, call you, and let's say like the rules, like she calls you every day at 3:00 and she doesn't call you at 3:00. And let's say it happens like 3 days in a row. You don't say that and go, okay, you fucked up. So I'm going to load up this backpack with sandbags and you're going to go on a 10-mile hike, like barefoot in the woods. Like that is way too far for just missing like a couple of phone calls. So you want to have it sort of related to communication, and you want the severity to equal the infraction. So it's really, really important. All right. But the whole point around this is having that moral severity and without the emotion behind it. So it's not cruel. You're not getting enjoyment out of correction. You shouldn't. And that's actually something that I had to realign within myself, because I've got a bit of a sadistic nature. Okay. I'm not very high on the sadism scale. I'd say I'm fairly moderate, but I still get enjoyment from causing discomfort. And so I kind of had to like shift things around in me and kind of compartmentalize and like just tell myself like, no, this is not for your enjoyment. This has to do with principle. This has to do with rules. So there has nothing to do with how you feel about it, whether we're talking about what she's done or what you're about to do. Your emotions should not be involved. And so I kind of like zeroed it out and then allow myself other pathways in order to express the sadism. Okay, moving on. Number 6, predatory presence. So this is very interesting. So the woman, the sub, she wants to feel that subtle danger, but it's controlled. It's patient, but it's always felt, right? Just kind of like bubbling beneath the surface just a little bit, like a simmer. The sense that she is prey in the hands of something far greater than her, not unsafe, but able to be devoured. So it's this feeling, both it's just in your presence. It has a lot to do with, well, everything, but just how you carry yourself, how you speak, how you think, and that moral severity, and like how well you stick to these things. And you're not like moved by emotion. You're not moved by sexuality. This kind of presents that subtle danger, because the guy who can't be controlled by a woman's charms or her tears or what have you is kind of dangerous to her, because he cannot be controlled. He cannot be influenced. And, also if you're stronger, like physically stronger than her, you're more competent than her, you're bigger than her, that also adds to it, right? It's an emotional thing. So like when girls are saying like, oh, I like tall guys, it's nothing but the feeling that they get from being with someone who has a larger stature than them. That's it. It's a feeling thing. The numbers, like 6 foot, they don't know fucking measurements. Guys, like if I say like, grab a piece of chalk and draw a line on the pavement that's about 6 feet long. Like, I think a lot of guys would be able to come very, very close to that, but I don't think girls can. I don't think they'd be able to draw a 6 foot line like a lot of girls. But so that's besides the point. But the reason that I'm saying it is because it's the feeling behind it that they like, and they can feel your danger, and that's kind of why I like the BDSM lifestyle so much. Oh, there's one of the reasons, anyways, is that it allows you to express that part of you, where you can be like, yeah, I am dangerous. Like I could literally snap you in half with like 40% of my power. And there's literally nothing you could do about it if I wanted to, but I don't. So it's kind of like that whole thing of it's better to be a warrior in a garden than a gardener in a war. Like, you want to be dangerous, but choosing to be peaceful, choosing to be a gentleman. And I think Jordan Peterson talked about this. He talked something around like being a monster, but just not a wild monster. The monster who's learned manners. And we look at Disney, Beauty and the Beast, like it captures that, like, quite literally. He's a prince or a lord or something like that. So he has the refinement of character, the refinement of speech and education and mindset and attitude. But he's a beast. Like, he's physically a beast that could, tear a horse in half. So, like, that's what she wants. In terms of feeling, she wants to feel that from you, that predatory presence. All right, number 7 here is psychological weight. And that is where his words carry consequence. She wants her mind rewritten by his worldview, his commands to echo in her decisions, his silence to sting with meaning. And so this is all about your vocal presence, okay? And how much you're able to influence how she feels and how she sees herself, how she sees you, and how she sees the world around her. And it all really starts with self-belief. So, like, because imagine, like, how can you rewrite her worldview if you doubt yourself? If you have insecurities, if you have high criticism, if you judge yourself, if you don't love or respect yourself. I don't mean like completely, but even like a percentage. It's going to be very hard. It's going to be very hard for her to fall into your perspective on yourself, on the world, on sexuality, spirituality, anything really. And so, to first accomplish this is you want to have that conviction about yourself, conviction about how you feel about yourself, conviction about your worldviews, conviction about everything. And the more solid it is, actually, the more still it is. I firmly believe that people who are always talking about their views, they're really looking for two things subconsciously. They're looking for either pushback or they're looking for acceptance. And in either case, it's something to strengthen whatever it is they believe in. So, and the reason why they're doing that is because they don't have the full belief in themselves. They need that validation, right? Either from the push or the pull. And because when you're solid, there's no reason to talk about anything like that. But I can feel it. I can literally see it where, like, guys will talk about themselves a lot. I'm like this. I do this. And I think like this. And they're always like almost advertising. And it feels like a subtle or sometimes not so subtle attempt at convincing others. And the only reason why you'd want to convince others of something is that if you're selling something or you don't believe in it. And so you're looking for support. And the support comes even with resistance. Because when someone says no, it's pretty typical that you're not going to agree with them and go, oh, you know what? You're right. No. You're going to push against their no with a yes. So, and that comes back, it bounces off their no, and it strengthens your yes, whatever you're positing, whatever, belief that you're positing. So, if I'm like this firm believer, well, I'm not so firm, but like moderately firm believer in like, supernatural deities. And I'm expressing this to other people. There I'm exposing that I don't quite fully believe it. Because if I did, if it was 100% with me, there'd be no reason to speak on it at all. And then I say this to people who don't believe what I believe. And they bounce it back to me with a no. And then that gives me energy to push back and say yes. So you see how it like fulfills the gap that I'm, probably unconsciously wishing that I had. And so, in that, the beginnings are, you have the conviction where you don't have to convince yourself. You don't have to convince others. It's just a truth. I am. And this is then carried into your communication. That's then carried into your words so that you go from having conviction in yourself to speaking with conviction. And we can all tell, we can all feel it or smell it when someone is trying to speak from conviction, but there's something about them that's off that makes you doubt what they're saying. But when you have the conviction, your communication, it carries consequence. It begins to rewrite how she sees herself, how she sees the world, how she sees numerous topics. It shapes the way she makes decisions. And when you are not communicating, that really leaves a sting. Because you've gone in and you've entered her mind and it's created weight. The presence there becomes very noticeable. It's quite vivid. So then when you disappear for whatever reason, maybe it's a form of punishment, and you're saying, listen, you're not going to contact me for 3 days, then this leaves quite the sting. And it just happens that way, right? Sometimes you have to do that. But this is what they want. They want somebody who possesses that, all right? But again, not the feral monster, but the monster with class. The monster who makes deliberate decisions. And he's not trying to be performative or controlling for the sake of control, right? It all just comes out natural. All right, number 8. What women and subs are looking for in a man is unspoken mythology. And by this, I mean that she's drawn to the feeling that he's more than just a man, that his dominance flows from some deeper source, a philosophy, a legacy, a personal code, and she wants to belong to that myth. So this goes back to what I was talking about, into believing in the self, having full faith in the self, pushing all the chips in the middle of the table on self. I'm betting everything on self. And this is enriched and bolstered by a philosophy, a legacy, your personal codes. And if it all just is woven together and makes sense, it's like a complete brand that makes sense, then it's much more convincing. And she wants to belong to that because it's solid. So having this unspoken mythology, again, unspoken because you're not out here advertising or trying to convince her of it or telling her all about it. Okay, I mean, unless she asks, right? And then you just answer the direct question for clarity. But you're not out here advertising to convince her. That's weakness. That shows that you doubt, that you don't have conviction, and that she won't feel that she belongs to said myth. It's about creating a myth about yourself. You're becoming a mythological being. And that's just a matter of perception. Right? I talked about this. I was reading this book about psychological stuff regarding BDSM. It's like deeper concepts, Jungian stuff with BDSM. And I clipped this thing. Let me see if I can just find it. It was a screenshot of, I got to go back in time because this was back when I was in SAPA. Here we go. So this is all about, okay. So about archetypes and the power of archetypes, right? Because, Jung, he talked a lot about archetypes and believed that there are archetypes living in us, right? And we can imbue ourselves with archetypal vibe or archetypal energy, all right? So it says here, the quote is, "The archetype is an active, invisible agent that is providing form and a pattern to a particular style of perception and psychological experience." Let me read that again. The archetype is an active, invisible agent that is providing form and pattern to a particular style of perception and psychological experience. For example, a king is not an archetype, but when one adopts a regal attitude and perceives the world with sovereign authority, the archetype of the king is emerging and giving form and pattern to the person's experience. Does that make sense? So this is how believing in the myth of yourself becomes very powerful, because it starts to shape your behavioral patterns, right? So you don't just sit here and say, well, I'm a king, and that's it. You don't just get off by saying that. You're not off the hook. But it's even better if you think like, okay, what does a regal attitude look like? A king has a regal attitude. What does that look like? How would he behave? And then and then how does a king look at things? He looks at things with sovereign authority. He's like of his own world. He's sovereign. And so there's, he's got grace. He's got class. He also has power. He could also be that monster. So, but what's more important is thinking of yourself in these terms and not just saying, I'm a king, right? It's the behaviors. It's the mindset. It's the outlook. And how you carry yourself. And you don't have to be theatrical about it. You know what I'm saying? Like strutting around with your nose in the air, like nothing like that. Taking like long, graceful steps, like you belong in Versailles or something like that. It doesn't have to be theatrical, okay? But it's more about the mindset. And the mindset will then start changing your behaviors, because it's almost like having an expectation for yourself without being so overt about it. If that makes sense. Okay, so she's looking for basically that myth, that world that you believe yourself to be and that you live in. And the more conviction is behind it, the more solid it becomes, the more real it becomes to her. And she wants to belong to that. She wants to be a part of that myth, a character in that myth. All right, number 9 here is devotional gravity. She really wants to feel this. She needs her surrender to matter. So it's not as novelty or kink, but as something that feeds him, that deepens him. Her obedience must feel like holy work. And this is where I've mentioned before that any woman with, working joints can kneel. All right. They can play the part. They can perform as novelty or keep it just in the realm of kink, and that's fine, but that's not surrender. That isn't surrendering. And there's something inside her coming from the core that she is saying like, I want to feel that. Like, I want to feel just letting loose of myself into the man. And the freedom and the joy and like just the, I don't know, just the big sigh of it, of letting go. And this is something that like kind of is calling from deep inside, that they want to surrender. Now, whether they can, due to all kinds of circumstances and what have you, life, history, family, if there's abuse, whether it's like psychological or sexual or physical, who knows, all sorts of stuff, just the things that we accumulate over time with life that can get in the way. And, I've talked about armor. And, when a girl has to like deal with the world, and if she's had severe pain, a lot of times they will adopt armor to protect themselves, to protect their psyche, to protect their heart. And, but inside there's a desire to not wear the armor. They just want to be free. They want to be free of the tension, be free of the load and the weight of carrying it all, and to just give up. And that's what surrendering is, right? Like, we talk about surrender more of like in a psycho-spiritual sense, but the other definition is like, I surrender, right? When they say like, stick them up, I mean, held at gunpoint, I surrender. Basically saying, I give up. I relinquish myself. No more resistance. And so they all kind of like work together as a giving up. And in her is that little quiet voice. And maybe in some girls it's loud, but it's this strong urge to give up. The only problem is that they've routinely been around men who have not been able to provide a container such that she can give herself up into, right? Because it's very dangerous to give up without something there like holding your form, so that you can feel comfortable and safe giving up. And this is something that plagues a lot of women. And if they go on for too long, they end up controlling a lot of things. This is like the classic housewife who has control over all of the workings of the home, the multiple family calendars, the school stuff for the son, the school stuff for the daughter, who's doing this for the cat and the dog, and, the bake sale and the soccer team, and this and this and this and this and this, like, and they just take on all of the organization of these things. Okay. It's not because they like it. It's not because they want to be a martyr. Okay. It's because being in control helps them feel safer. But the funny thing is that it never really works. It doesn't really provide a profound safety, right? It's just this plastic coating of safety on the surface, and it can suffice. But over time, constantly having to feed and replenish this type of safety over and over and over, day after day, it wears on them. And this is when they snap. And they're like, all you do is go to work, and I got to do this, and I'm shouldered with this responsibility, that responsibility, and everything's on me, and like, it's so unfair, blah, 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 And then usually, because most guys have some sort of, they're on the spectrum for nice guy disorder. And so they appease, and they're like, okay. And they pick up and they start doing like more housework, thinking, that'll help her feel better. And hey, maybe if she feels better, she's less stressed out, then maybe she'll suck my dick more often. And lo and behold, it never does anything. And sometimes it makes things worse because you obeyed her. And in her core, there's that gentle knock, like from the inside on her saying, that's not right. That doesn't make our pussy happy. What are you doing? I don't like that. And it just starts this like vicious circle. So understand, like when there's a lot of control, a lot of organizational control and things like that, a lot of times it stems from fear. It happens with guys, and it most definitely happens with girls. So the last one here, number 10, the 10th thing that women and subs are looking for is power without performance. She longs for a dominant who does not need to act dominant. His presence alone makes her soften. The power is quiet. It's effortless. It's sovereign, never needing to posture. And so this kind of goes back to my examples of the guy who's like always advertising his masculinity. It's so apparent to everybody, and it's lost on them. It's crazy. The guy who's like, no, I don't need a truck. I need a truck that looks like a monster truck. So I'm going to like overdo the motor. The paint is going to be fucking gaudy. There's going to be too much chrome all over the place. It's going to have straight pipe exhaust. I'm going to have the suspension raised 14 inches. And it's going to have these enormous fucking tires on it such that I need a ladder to get into the damn thing. Like, it just blows my mind because there's so many guys who are like this. And they don't realize, what a putz they're being. There you go. Nice Yiddish word for you, putz. But yeah, they're being a putz. And that's not what they're looking for. Okay, because that shows actual weakness. The more you perform strength, the more you show strength. Like you're trying to show it to other men, you're trying to show it to the woman. It just does the direct opposite. And it comes off again as, who are you trying to convince here? And that's when it gets, silly for them. And when they lose respect and they lose attraction, and their pussy becomes stiff and dry. A stiff pussy, that's something to think about. But yeah, it becomes stiff and dry. Their arousal becomes stiff and dry. And so there's something about that kind of, that fatherly power where, the kid does something wrong and the dad just has to look at him. And so the look is like disappointment, a bit of maybe frustration or anger or sadness. And just the look alone, it feels like they're being spanked. And it goes deeper than the spanking. And the kid's like, shit, like my dad is really disappointed in me. And that it just kind of like squeezes and crushes their spirit a little bit. And so one who has that power, this is what she longs for. She longs to feel that way. Okay, so it's not like this is the kind of guy I want. It's really that kind of guy is going to make me feel the feeling that I really want to feel. I hope that makes sense. She doesn't want that actual guy. She just wants to feel what she could from a guy like that. So those are the 10 things, right? That's really at the core of their desires when it comes to a man. And now let's look at the guys. Let's look at the fellas, okay? And dominance. So the first one here is a receptive core. This is absolutely essential. Well, I mean, these are all essential, all 20 of these. 10 for the subs, 10 for the doms. So it's a receptive core. So not just physical submission. And you guys got to get out of this. And it's, the fault of porn and a lack of education. But it's not just physical submission. Again, any girl can kneel. It doesn't mean she's submitting to you. It doesn't mean she's surrendered her will to you. So not just the physical stuff, but psychic permeability. A woman who lets herself be altered, who lets his thoughts seed her own thoughts. Not just follow, but absorb. This is what men are looking for. A receptive core, a woman who has psychic permeability. She allows herself to be altered. And she doesn't just follow him, she absorbs him. Now, again, this calls into question, are you something to be absorbed? Or are you just a regular dude who doesn't stand for anything, has no conviction, has no presence, doesn't even understand what his principles are, if he even has any? Probably does, but doesn't know what they are. So, in order to receive that receptive core, it has to be something for her to go into. Very important. Because from there, this is what allows them to be coachable. What allows you to influence them towards, and achieving higher states of consciousness, higher states of behavior. Emotional healing, behavioral healing. Like this all comes about through her ability to be receptive to you, which is ultimately reflected back on you. Because if she can't trust you because you have this sort of thing or that sort of thing going on inside you, then she's not going to be receptive because she can't fully trust you. All right. Number 2 here, sacrificial loyalty. He longs for one who would give up lesser comforts to serve something greater, who would kneel not for pleasure, but because it's right, whose loyalty costs her something. And that's where you can see loyalty, right? It's not just loyalty like loyal to, your favorite football team, right? It's sacrificial loyalty, where one is willing to give something up in order to follow you. And that's where you can see that there's conviction of her own. Like, we all love conviction. Someone who truly believes in something is not just posturing because it looks cool or it's fun or sexy. We see this all over the internet. All over Instagram, people they're posturing. And the funny thing is that we all know that it's fake, which just increases the desire for genuine conviction. So what if you were the guy with genuine conviction? You're going to stand out, right? And so, we're looking for that. We're looking for the girl who's willing to give something up that's important, that's willing to challenge certain things just to be with you. And don't go thinking that this is fantasy. This is real. I've experienced it before. I'm experiencing it now. It's absolutely real. So it's just not common. Like, none of these things are common. Okay. But I'll tell you this, it becomes more common when you are dialed in, because it allows these things, it gives a greater opportunity for this list to evolve and show itself to you. All right, number 3, reflective hunger. He watches for a craving that mirrors his own, a hunger for structure, a hunger for use, for a sacred balance. She may be afraid of it, but it's there. And he wants that mirror. And so maybe instead of hunger, we could say like incredibly strong willingness, like intense willingness for the structure, a high willingness for use, a willingness for sacred balance. And because he's that way, he's hungry for structure. He's hungry for function or use, and he's hungry for sacred balance. And so again, like, this ties into having conviction. Okay. So if what you are is like, it's on, like it's 100%, there's no doubt, this will inspire her own, right? Because remember the thing about the myth, she'll see that, and it will be so much easier to then roll into that myth, to mirror him. And sure, there might be a bit of fear or discomfort because it's foreign. It's not what she's used to. It's so she has she's got no data on it, but it also draws her in. And that's where the fear is, because I said she may be afraid of it, but it's there. And this is like the fear of uncertainty because of never having experienced it before, never having experienced a man like this before. And so, this sort of stuff, it becomes so much easier, like I said, when you have yourself dialed in. Okay, number 4 here is elegant vulnerability. So this is not what you think it is, all right? It's not neediness, but it's the courage that's involved, all right? So, so it's not neediness that the Dom is looking for, but the courage to offer her wounds, the ones she hides from others. She allows him to touch where it hurts, not to heal, right? Even though healing happens, but to own it all. And so this is a woman that's not scared of you. That's really what this is. So it's someone who's unafraid of bearing themselves, basically just removing everything and exposing what they are, exposing, their fears, exposing their flaws, exposing, their pain, exposing to the junk that they hold on to, that they've been carrying since childhood. And they're all there. All the girls are there. Like this, they all have something. And sometimes it's many things. Sometimes it's just a couple of things. But either way, they're carrying something, and it's a burden. And, it's often stuff that they would care to hide and pretend aren't there. But what we're looking for is for the woman to be willing to offer this stuff and be unafraid of you, because you're not going to judge, you're not going to criticize, you're not going to pick apart. And, she then learns that through your guidance, your leadership, that it's what she experiences, not only healing, but a greater sense of ownership, because you now know the workings. And it's funny, like I experienced this, when I got into writing. So when I first got into writing, but when I got back into writing after college, I really didn't know much about bikes. Like I could change oil, and that's about it. Maybe spark plugs. But there was so much that I didn't know. And I was just always bringing it to mechanics to get work done. And once I learned about the inner workings, and I learned how to fix things, and I learned what to listen for and what to look for, it not only kind of cured my ignorance, but I gained a sense of ownership over my machines. I now really felt like I owned them. instead of just, there's no connection between me and the machine. It's just like, I know like a little bit. And it's kind of like we're just kind of friends or coworkers, me on the bike. We know each other just a little bit. But once I really dove in and I started really studying and, like experimenting and practicing certain things, the knowledge grew, the confidence settled in, and then it really developed this sense of ownership, like ownership of the space and ownership, like a greater ownership of the bike. So not only like legally I own it, like of course, but from I guess more of a poetic way of looking at it. And this is what guys are looking for. Like they're looking to have her give everything to her so that he can hold it all, so that he can possess it all. But obviously, again, this requires a tremendous amount of trust to open that much, especially after years of learning that as a woman, they will be judged for exposing themselves. They'll be judged for exposing like too much sadness, too much anger. Joy they like because it makes your titties bounce. All like the whole thing, right? They've learned to kind of filter what is shown. And with us desiring the elegant vulnerability, this is saying you are free and welcome to expose yourself here. And I remember, the first time that I was with my current sub, like sexually, and I had her, I was like fully clothed, and we had like a small ceremonial like greeting, and then I had her turn around and face me, and I sat down, and I just told her to undress. And, then she like kept her panties on. I was like, no, everything. Like expose yourself to me. And all the while, like up to that point, it was all psychological and emotional exposure, sexual exposure. But this was for the first time of her physical exposure to me, like in the same room. And, it was a profound effect. Right, because there was no more hiding. Like I saw so much, right, and not just of her body, but like from that disrobing, while I'm clothed, it put her in such a stark difference. So on like all the levels between like where she was and where I was, and it's a powerful scene to think about. Right. And that's why I chose to do it. Right. Like there was, a lot of things were planned, right, in order to produce a certain effect. And so I absolutely planned, this entire scenario in order to produce a certain feeling of this elegant vulnerability. And sure, she was, I imagine, nervous, but I don't think she was scared. I don't think she was scared to reveal herself. And that's an important thing, right? But we want this. We want the willingness from a girl to be that offering, to offer of themselves. All right, number 5, delight in being shaped. He desires not only obedience, but joy in being changed. A woman who wants to be reshaped, not as a favor or just out of pure obedience, but as a fulfillment. Her evolution is devotion. Now, I know this is a lofty one, okay? But it's like, why would you want to be with somebody who doesn't enjoy growth? That just boggles my mind. Why men are with rigid women. And some of them pride themselves on being rigid. I don't know why they're with these girls. I have no idea why you'd want to be with somebody who doesn't want to take your internal leadership and enjoys it. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't want her to just do what I say. It's do what I say with a smile on your heart. Not just on your face, but a smile on your heart. Like, this is what guys really want. And they don't even sometimes realize that this is what they want. But when I start talking about these things, they're like, oh yeah, that actually sounds like it'd be fucking great. Because it is. Like, there's a big difference, being a teacher and in a classroom and having a bunch of kids there who are there and just tolerating it. And then you've got another class where the kids love your class. They love learning from you. They're always happy to see you, bringing you little presents, and kind of maybe like joking with you a little bit before class, wanting to do a good job because they love the praise. Like, the whole vibe is just on. So they're taking joy in his leadership, like as the teacher. And this is where you should be at as well, taking joy in what you do. And hopefully this is, she's getting the joy from learning, being that student, happily coming to class 10 minutes early. You know what I mean? Like, just to clean the erasers. I remember having to do that. You guys kids probably don't use that shit anymore. They don't have like chalkboards and erasers in classes anymore, I don't think. But yeah, we had to clean them. You take them, like bang them together and make chalk dust go up in the air, and we were all breathing it in. It's fine. The further back in time you go, the more resilient children were perceived to be. Like, kids are so fucking soft now. It's like, you don't understand what your great grandfather did when they were your age. It's like, you got an iPad, man, they played with rocks. They had a first job when they were like 12, and it was working in a factory. Their friends at work were missing fingers, and like you're pissed because your like a website is down. The Wi-Fi is on the fritz. Motherfucker. So soft and privileged. Anyways, all right, moving on to number 6. Conspiratorial silence. So this is not constant validation or chatter, okay? A man wants shared meaning in glances. He wants quiet understanding. He wants the woman who feels the ritual in not just the words, but the spaces between them. And this is the sort of thing where you communicate without words to each other, just through the eyes, where you can look at each other from, say it's like you're both at a large, birthday party, not for kids, but for adults. It's like out at a bar, it's noisy, and, you're having fun, you know what I mean? And you're not really talking with your girl, but she's there, and you kind of give her a look and she gives you a look, and there's so much communicated there, like reading in micro expressions. And you can tell, like, okay, she's having a good time, but, I can tell she's getting tired and she really wants to go. But she's not the one to say, hey, daddy, can we go? Right? Or like, I'm bored. I don't want to be here anymore. I just want to get my PJs and get on the couch, right? Suck your dick. Like, they're not going to be like that, right? But they'll convey all of that to you. And you say, okay, right? And maybe a hand gesture to say 5 minutes. And that's all that's necessary. But guys, like, if you ever had this, you want it again. And because there's great power in being able to communicate with another person without necessarily needing words all the time. That's it. I mean, I don't really have much else to say about that. But that is just a great feeling where, you've got such a great understanding with one another that it doesn't need defense. Coming around. All right, number 7, private ritualist. A private ritualist. So she does not serve only under his gaze. And this is really, really important. Her submission echoes even when she's alone. How she sits, how she dresses, how she touches herself, or if she touches herself. She may not have permission. How she communicates, her mindset, how she feels, like all of these things. So a woman who lives as if he's always watching. And this is really what a lot of guys are after. Absolutely what doms are after. That she's not a fair weather submissive. I had a sub who was like this. She was great and she was very submissive, but only when she was feeling great. If she ever had a bad day, or if she was having a problem with me or anything else, right? Just anything but like having a great day, the submission turned off. It wasn't real submission. It was more performative and more so linked to her positive attitude for that day. And so I, called her in my head. I didn't tell this to her face, but I said that she's a fair weather submissive, like a fair weather friend who only comes around when things are really great. But you can tell your true friends by the ones who sit by you on good days and the worst days. And so in the same way, we want the submissive who carries themselves in private in the same exact way as they carry themselves when by your side. And this shows like presence, okay? So she's chosen to bring your presence into her daily living as if you're watching her, as if you're listening to her, even when, you're not there. You're at work, or you're from another city or from another country. So we want that. We want the private ritualist, as well as the girl who can submit, in front of me or in front of us. Number 8, shameless reverence. So men crave the one who worships with abandon, not theatricality, but with sacred authenticity. No irony, no cringe, just that ancient instinct that you're above me and I belong to you. And this is absolutely what guys are looking for. Absolutely what they want. Okay. Now, granted, all of these things have a spectrum, right? I'm reading this with a little bit of sauce on it, but it's worships with abandon. But it's basically describing a strong devotion that's not playing pretend, that's not treating it like a pretense, but instead with sacred authority, where they basically take it seriously and like having respect that is so high and taken so seriously that basically turns into worship. Now, it's not blind worship. If you're an idiot or an asshole, or you don't know how to lead, her worship is likely performative. Her respect is probably performative. So this again always goes back to You. It all starts with you. Like, she can't do the things that you haven't positioned her to do, like setting her up to win. All right. Number 9 is an offering mindset. So she doesn't just obey, she offers. She offers everything. Like, she offers her body, she offers her effort, she offers her pain, her pleasure, her attention, her fears, her injuries. She seeks what to give. Day starts with, how may I serve you today? Or how can I help you today? And she measures her worth by her usefulness to this purpose. Which is a good shift, right? Because a lot of girls, what do? They link their self-worth by their appearance. And, I'm impressed with doing. I'm impressed with behavior, action, because anybody can talk, right? But it's another thing to break a habit, to change your perspective deeply. Okay, these are all actions and not just sharing of words and lip service. So it comes from just the greatest sense of giving. And what can I give? How can I give? And this too exists. I know guys probably maybe grumble and they're like, no, not on your life, not in this day and age. Yes, in this day and age. Absolutely. And if you want this, don't feel ashamed to want it. You shouldn't feel ashamed about wanting any of these things. But learn to accept it. Like, if you're finding hesitation, right, or it's backed up by some kind of belief, then you have to get rid of it, because that's keeping you separated from your desires. It's perfectly fine and totally okay and well within your rights to say what you want, to want a girl that doesn't just obey, but she offers herself. Like, she is the thing that she comes to the table with. And it's so funny because I've heard people talk about this, girls, and they're like, a guy says, well, what do you bring to the table? And she's like, me. But it's purely from a rooting in pride and rooting in ego, where she's like, oh, me, you get to have me. But that's not actual offering, is it? It's more like a purchase. And we don't want to purchase our women. We want genuine, authentic desire. And, not just for the lusty stuff, but a desire to offer. And that makes a huge difference. An offering person. All right, number 10 here is a darkness that bows. So it's not innocence. It's not purity. He often desires a woman who knows darkness, who has met her pain, who's met her rage, her pride, but chooses to kneel. And that choice is what gives it meaning. So basically, this is just self-awareness, a knowing of all the aspects of yourself, not really trying to hide it all and saying, there's no problems that I have. I'm made of sugar and spice and everything nice. Because as much as guys believe that nonsense, so do girls. The programming was universal. So there we have it. We've got, 10 things from the DOMs, 10 things from the subs. And nothing has to do with the surface. It's it's all deeper things that really move us. And you got to get past that surface stuff. It doesn't. I'm not saying abandon it. Not at all. Okay, not at all. You can keep whatever surface things you want. You know what I mean? If you're like, no, I really want a girl with, black hair or red hair or, huge tits or small tits or like this or that or whatever. You know what I'm saying? Like, you can want what you want, and women can want what they want. It's perfectly fine. Okay. But when it comes to glue, when it comes to the soil and the seed of the connection, the soil and the seed of the relationship, it has to be something much more fundamental than those things. Like when, let me go back to the list, the sub list of like what they're looking for. Okay. That part about the moral severity, the predatory presence, the psychological weight, the mythology, the power without performance, that all speaks to when women say protect and provide. The pride, that's more like on like the guidance aspect, but the protect part, that's all there. The severity, the predatory presence, the psychological weight, the mythology, the power without performance. This is protection. Because, like, how can you protect if your kingdom is vague? You don't know where the land starts, like the common land starts, and where your walls begin. And a lot of guys are like this. Now, because they're not like clearly defined, they haven't really defined themselves. So it's just a blur. It's like, I don't know where the kingdom starts and the common land begins. I have no idea. And this is, it's important. It's really important, because once that gets really defined, that's when you can really roll things into motion. That's when the myth begins. That's when she starts to have something beyond just the guy in front of her to believe in. There's a system. There's like there's a mythos that he lives by and that he's a part of. This narrative, this story of who he is, that she can buy into. And the more fleshed out this is, the more obvious this is, the more apparent, both to yourself, well, first to yourself, then it becomes that much more apparent to her. And this is where she starts to sink in. Shout out to Steve. Like, this is where the beginnings of the quicksand that he talks about. And it starts with that self-belief, the unwaveringness of your own self-belief, your own self-concept. Really important. So I told myself that I was not going to go over 12. I was not going to go over 12. So I'm not going to. But that's what I wanted to cover tonight. Keep it simple and sweet, a little less heavy, and allow you guys to kind of think a little bit more deeply, right? So I would suggest taking some notes, like kind of going back in and taking some notes, and especially about like what I mentioned about like what men are looking for in women, what the dom is looking for in a sub, and like make note of those things. I mean, make note of all of them, right? Because you want to embody the things that submissives need in a man. Oh, hey, Dylan. What's up, man? Dylan here, he's a friend and a student. He's not a full-time student, but he's a student. And he bought my book, How to Be a Dominant Lover, and has really enjoyed it. And so I hope that's still proving to be a useful resource for you. So what's he say here? Training jujitsu, yeah, and he's been rolling for a while. Training jujitsu and becoming proficient and confident in it has been the single greatest elevator in my romantic life. Yeah, because it's, well, combat sports in general, they're just, they're different. It's a different sort of thing that I don't know, it challenges your ego. It's the place where you can see that the more proficient they are, the more relaxed they become, the more chill they are. Because in order to get there, they've had to bust their ass. And they've had to bust their ass. And in that process, the ego was challenged so many times. Because in order to get good at anything, right, and especially combat sports, is that every time that you think you're good, at some point you get trounced. You get your bell rung in the sparring ring, you get choked out, you get locked out, and you're just like, dang, I didn't expect that. And your ego goes bang, like just a sledgehammer to it. At first, after a while, you just kind of learn to accept and roll with that blow to your ego. You're just like, oh yeah, I knew that was coming at some point. Hello, old friend. My ego. And it re-humbles you. And you go through cycles of this, and you do it enough, and those blows become less damaging, and you just go straight to the learning part. Because the sensation of damage to your ego comes from resistance, where something comes in and says, no, you're not, like whatever it is, right? No matter what the context is, but the outside influx of something says, no, you're not, right? No, you're not as smart as you think you are. No, you're not as talented as you think you are. No, you're not as good a fighter as you think you are. And the resistance is what causes the discomfort, because the ego steps in and goes, well, yes, I am. Like, I don't care if you just almost knock me out, right? Those judges were, they were compromised. Yeah, they're blind, but you just accept it after a while, and you go, yep, there it is. And you should start looking at things objectively, and it allows you to move through it so much faster, and then you progress faster, and you become more relaxed in the process. And so, like, getting better, it becomes smoother, because your ego's not getting in the way. And I notice this a lot with martial arts training, a lot. It'll really bring you there quick. And, in the same way, the presence of a woman will bring you there quick too. It's not as immediate as someone just, kicking you upside the head, or just laying in a good tie kick to your thigh, and you're like, holy fuck, I can't walk. But, a woman will do the same thing, if she sticks around long enough, because this will challenge so much of what you think is true. It's holding that yes about yourself, and then this outside thing comes in. It happens to be a little girl, and she goes, I don't believe you. And your ego's like, fuck, but I want you to believe me. I believe me, I think. Why don't you? I'm trying really hard here. And this actually happened with one of my guys, and he was, he realized that he was ill-equipped. Like, he realized he was just not at all where he wanted to be. And now with, working with me, the understanding of where he needs to be, like, as far as like his position within a relationship. Like he's just realized he has so much work to do. And between realizing how much work he has to do and how it felt to come to that realization, he was like, oh gosh, I can't handle being in a relationship. But that's just the ego. It's the fear of being seen as not as equipped as his ego would like him to believe he is. But that's the ding, that's the dent that flies in that hurts, but it's so constructive. If your emotions don't get in the way, if you don't fall into sadness, fall into depression, if you don't fall into anger, if you don't resist with being contrarian, you just accept it. And you see how she's reacting to you, or she's, some girls, they just straight up tell you. And, that can be a little embarrassing or whatever, but, either way, it's like if they have the devotion of wanting to stay, then it doesn't really matter. And that's kind of like what his position is. Like his girl, like she's like obsessed with him, absolutely obsessed with him. And he's come to this understanding of like, well, shit, I'm not the guy that I need to, because we start talking and I start showing him some stuff. And he's like, his perspective, the lights are turning on. He can see clearer, the fog is separating on himself, his self-perception. And so he's like, oh, wow, I have a lot of work to do. And so there's this discomfort of being seen because he cut it off with her. And he did that because he was afraid of being seen, for one. And two, he didn't want to lose her. And so those are both terrible things. You should never be afraid of losing a woman, because that's the attachments, right? What are the three poisons, right? And any of the three poisons leads to suffering. Right? Craving, ignorance, and hatred. These things will all make you suffer, like all the time, without fail. And so to be in that position with regard to a woman, right, having that craving, that attachment, it will make you suffer. And when you're suffering, you are not centered. You don't think straight. You don't make good decisions. You don't. You don't, you don't operate cleanly, like just the machine has muck in it. And this is not a good way to be as a man. It's dysfunctional. So it's very important to mind the attachment. And so he wanted to kind of get out. And he was like, I can't be like this. I can't be like this. I can't be in a relationship and be like twisted, misaligned, broken. And I said, and she also was like, why? Because again, she's obsessed with him. She's like, I don't care that you have work to do, like that you have things to tend to within yourself. Like that's okay. But his pride is having difficulty. And, and that's okay too, because that's just where he is on his path. But I explained to him that she's absolutely right, because what her presence will do is it will cause all of the triggers that he holds inside him to become triggered. So like mom issues, they will definitely be triggered by her presence and force the recognition, which then forces the healing. And so that's what the presence of a woman is like. It's like being in that combat ring. Like, sure, you can learn stuff without actually like going to tournaments and getting into, controlled combat with other men. But your learning, if you don't do that, yeah, you can progress, but your learning is going to take so much longer. So much longer. If you just kind of only keep it to the dojo and that sort of thing. It's like, yeah, your skill will increase for sure, but not as fast as being face to face with a guy who's trying to knock you out, either with his fist or his grip, And in the same way, my students who are not with a woman, or a woman's not with them, sure, they learn, okay, but it stays in the realm of theory. And it touches on some things that are real, like their own issues and their past and things like that. But it becomes very vivid when there's a woman right in front of them. All of that stuff, all that old shit starts kind of being pushed up to the surface, and very quickly and very easily, depending on the situations at hand. And so I was like, no, don't take a leave of absence while you get your shit together, so to speak, and then get back into the relationship. Like, no, stand your ground, be right there, be present, and face all these little goblins that come forth, and then deal with them. And I'm here, right? I'm not just gonna like, okay, figure it out. You know what I mean? Like, in the midst of it, my guys are allowed to communicate with me 24/7, via messaging. And then we have calls every week for an hour. Every week there's an hour-long call. Homework assignments, book assignments, plus my library, which is, full of videos. The audio section I'm growing right now. So for my students, they get all these new audio tracks that I'm making on my website. That's just included in their, when they enroll. And then a lot of documentation. And the documents are great, because they're like how-tos, basically. They're like a very detailed program on like how to train a submissive. And it goes like week by week of like what you should be doing, all throughout like a few months. And, it's quite detailed. But there's all sorts of like training documents. So with that, if you guys want to book a call, take a look at the links that Uncle Guns has so kindly put into the chat. You can either go to the website and click that top right big button and book a call instantly that way, or you can go to the consultation link that he has provided for us. Thank you for doing that each time, Uncle Guns. You're great. Okay, so I am going to pull this to a close. I hope you guys enjoyed the stream. And, I hope it was informative for you in the sense that it got you thinking in a different direction. And that's the whole point. That's the where you want to be. You want to get it to the point where, say, the woman in your life is someone that you are guiding into thinking, perceiving, behaving, and feeling in ways that she didn't before. And this is really important that you get here. So don't be afraid to detach just a little bit, okay? Not fucking across the room. You're just like a few feet detached. Well, actually, it's less than that. I tell my guys 12 inches back and 12 inches up. That's how far away you are from her. But that's enough. That's enough to just offset the distance. You're not eye to eye. You're not on equal playing ground. You both have value, but you're not equal. And this is the position that you have to be okay with. Because it's funny is that she's with you. She loves you. She worships you. But you are alone. There's only one cushion on the throne. They don't, like love seats, those like short couches that have like two cushions and two people can sit on it, like, oh, like a lovey and shit like that. That's not how a throne works. I've never seen a throne like that. Never. Even if he's got a throne for his queen, it's still separate from his and is not butted right up next to him. It's like a couple feet to the side. You're alone. And I don't say that as a threat. I don't say that as like a means for you to get sad, but to ring it up into your head that you are a leader. Leaders stand by themselves, in their position. They could be surrounded by hundreds, but their position is a solitary one. And this is something to get used to. But once you're comfortable with that and you're okay and you're not feeling needy or scared or what have you, okay, or even proud and boastful, you just kind of accept, this is what I am, this is here I am, or this is where I am. Then leading becomes that much easier because you're accepting your station. And once you accept and believe in the station, it becomes so much easier. And like you hear this, like with so many different walks of life, if like a musician, you see with like a lot of the creatives, you've heard of the phrase, imposter syndrome, where someone doesn't believe that they're as good as everyone says they are. And the thing is that you have to let go of that. And the minute you let go of this idea that, you're like an imposter of a man instead of actually a man, then that helps you become actually a man. And I'll bring this full circle. It really helps to not listen to women. And I don't mean this in like a disregarding sort of way, but as a means of keeping your mind focused, keeping your mind grounded, right, in something that's actually reliable, which is believing in yourself. This is what cultivates it. That's what gets that wheel spinning, okay, where it becomes self-fulfilling, self-perpetuating. So you don't have to listen to women, not at all. And there's a degree to it though, okay? And this will be when she has become your woman. And by doing that, she has learned to express all those traits that I had mentioned. And then some, because now there's the particularities to your program that she just is willingly, happily serving into. She's not becoming an extension, a mirror reflection of you, of your program, of your worldview, of how you feel, of your beliefs. And now you can listen to her words. Now she's earned the right for her words to matter, right? Where she's given of herself to say, okay, I respect what's in there. But otherwise, it's like, why? Why the fuck would you even bother listening? That doesn't make any sense whatsoever. You can hear it, okay? There's a difference between hearing and listening. Listening is where you are putting intent into it. Hearing is just the function of the ears. So I'm not saying like you go out on dates with girls and they're talking and yapping at you and you go, huh? Well, you can. That'll be pretty funny. Or she's going on about her dog and her Aunt Judith and this and that and the other. And after fucking 10 minutes of her slapping her lips, you look at her and go, what'd you say? Slurp your beer. Oh, man. I am such an asshole. But stop laughing. All right, guys. I appreciated your time with me tonight. And I appreciate those who are watching on the replay. You are valued as well, even though I don't get to see you. But I would like to. So come around on the lives, okay? I want to get more people in here. I want to open up the stage and have people come up onto the stage. They can ask questions. They can get live coaching. They don't have to use the real name. They don't have to, click on their camera. And we can really show, what, coaching looks like, or you can just get your questions answered without having to put things in the chat. But I do realize that, some of this stuff is very heavy And it's almost like, well, what do I ask? Like I've been there. I've been there. Just with my teachers, I mentioned my two martial arts teachers, the World War III guy and the Kung Fu monk. And it was almost like they would turn my brain to mush and then expecting me to formulate a decent question. Like, I don't know what the fuck to say. You just liquefied my brain. What do I ask you? Like how to put it back to solid again? What's your favorite color? Anyways. All right, guys. Enough stalling. Have yourself a good evening. Get some good rest. And we'll see you on the next one. Take it easy.